Yeah, it's a funny one because even in my first Olympics in Beijing, I went there with an expectation of winning a medal as a
Yeah.
21-year-old. And I look back now and I'm like, Emma, you should have just been there enjoying it, lapping it up, experiencing it. But I was devastated when I didn't make the final. So that was my first Olympic devastation, I guess you could say. And then London, I'd been in the medals at World Champs for pretty much every year in between. So I've been in the top four in the world since 2009, but just haven't quite won a medal at the right time. And yeah, it was just, for me, it was an expectation that I was at least medal potential, if not Olympic champion potential. And every time I went to the games, for whatever reason, in London and Rio, the ducks just weren't quite lined up and it wasn't my time. But I knew I had it in me.
I was wondering about that when it comes to timing. Of course, this Olympics is 12 months late. You know, it's more than fashionably late this one around. And I was thinking, was there something in that 12-month delay that helped you? And I'm not suggesting that you wouldn't won it 12 months ago, but I don't know. I was thinking about athletes in general. They seem to have this. Obviously, speaking from complete ignorance here, but seem to have a 4-year cycle where they peak for the Olympics, and then they peak for the Olympics. Whereas people should have peaked last year, but then had to peak again. And I was wondering if we were going to see an Olympics with a whole lot of results that maybe weren't where they would have been if they had been 12 years ago. You know, maybe people had peaked and they weren't going to perform quite as well. For you, was there anything about the 12-month delay that was helpful? Because you smashed that final. It wasn't, it wasn't even close. I'm going to ask you. I'm sorry. This is what I do. I talk lots of around the circles. I always ask people when they know they thought they were going to win, and I'll talk to you about that shortly. But the commentators were saying 40 seconds out. You know, this is yours. Yeah. They were saying that. So you smashed that final, and I just wondered if there was anything about that 12-month delay that helped you get to where you got.
Yeah, I think the 12-month delay was something that either was a good thing for people or a bad thing for people. Obviously, some people missed out on the games. Mahe's a great example of that. It was just a year too long for him. And same within my field, the current world champion from Ireland. She's a bit older. She's 39, I think, maybe 40 now. So I think a year for her was just too long. But for me, I'd come back. I'd had 2 years off, not even touching an oar, and I'd come back with 2 years to go. So even that time frame, I guess, was pushing things a little bit to be in top shape. So to be gifted an extra year, I think really helped. But also that year and what we went through in that year, it definitely wasn't linear, as they say. There was ups and downs even within that year. Mm-hmm. And before the original planned games time, my coach actually had a horrific car accident and wasn't actually going to be with me potentially in Tokyo. So I feel like there's, everything happens for a reason. And it was, not long after that car crash that the games were postponed, and it gave him an extra year to get back on his feet. And then within that year, we also have done things differently because we haven't been able to travel and, go to World Cups and race different events, which I think actually with hindsight has helped us to just peak right when we needed to.
Wow. Because I was going to talk to you about that time you took off as well. You did a bit of I think of it as doing a bit of a Michael Jordan, stepping away from your sport for a couple of years and then kind of coming back. So you're saying that the extra 12 months probably gave you a bit of extra time to get to where you could be. And then when you could be there, we got to have a look at this in the background. Let me just set this all up. When you could get there, as I said, the commentators, and I won't play the commentary because that always gets me pulled off the internet. The commentators were saying, I think, probably about here, that it's yours to lose, which is basically another way of saying it's yours to win. I'm wondering when you were in that race right there, when did you think, yep, got this is mine? Was it there when you crossed the line, or was there a time beforehand?
I actually think it was probably more around the 1,000-meter mark, to be honest.
Really?
Yeah, well, even before that, after the semi-finals, I knew I had it in me. I knew my times. I knew I had great speed, and I hadn't really maxed myself out in all of those previous races. I had one question mark over the Russian girl who got second in terms of her ability in the last 500 meters and what she might pull out on the day. But after we started, and I realized, how in a single scale to bring back 3 or 4 lengths requires a huge amount of effort.
Right.
And I knew that I wasn't right on my limit at the 1,000-meter mark. So anyone that came at me, I knew that I could respond to. So yeah, it was it was all a bit of a blur, the race itself, but I think part of my success was the fact that I was confident and just had great performances consistently throughout the week.